Rachel.
Hey, Brittany.
So today I want to talk about something that I think is very important. Excuse me, I had some notes that I was pushing down there for a second. I want to talk about fascism and what fascism is, because I think that's an important word to know right now, especially. But, back in the old days before we had the video for this podcast, I talked a lot about isms and all these different isms. And an ism, like think communism, capitalism, fascism, these are words that kind of mean, with the ism in the end, it's like a belief structure or a set of actions or behaviors that define a thing. So fascism is an ideology, and it's something that people throw around a lot right now. It's become an insult that no one understands. If somebody thinks that you are a bad person or that you are on a power trip or whatever it is, they'll just call you like, fascist, you're a fascist. And I was thinking about it, I'm like, there's a movie, Princess Bride, and this character always uses the word inconceivable. And finally, one of the characters goes, I don't think that means what you think it means, because he just keeps saying it for everything. And I always, I think of that Inigo Montoya pointing and saying, I don't think you know what that means. That's a fun,
you keep using that word.
Yeah. So fascism is very misunderstood. And today, people use it to pretty much pinpoint and call names to anyone who is their political opponent. And both sides do this, so I don't want to pick on one or the other. And I have to admit that back in the day, I would call, whichever president I didn't like, oh, well, he's a fascist. Oh, well, he's a fascist. And it's like, okay, when you use that word too much to describe everything, it's losing its power and its real meaning. And fascism is actually pretty scary. So I want to get into that today. And by getting into fascism, we're also going to touch on someone named Benito Mussolini. And he is also in the Tuttle Twins' Guides to Villains. So it's kind of a two-part, because you can't have fascism without Benito Mussolini. So fascism, what does that mean? There's something called a fasces. I always say that wrong, but I think that's what it is, a fasces. You have to do homework and check on that. I'm really bad at pronouncing old words. But that is like an axe and a bundle of sticks tied together. And that's what it is. And I want you to Google that. So that will be your homework of what that looks like, because that is where fascism gets its name, because a
bundle of sticks.
It's a bundle of sticks, but it's supposed to represent like strength and unity, and it's, might. Look at the axe coming together. So that sounds okay, right? Who doesn't want to be mighty and who doesn't want to be powerful? But when all those bundles, those single sticks are bundled together, and they only mean something if they're together around that axe, what are we losing? We're losing the importance of that one stick. And that's a key factor of fascism, is the individual doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. The individual is not even second, it's last, because the number one thing is the state. The state is the reason for being. It's not about you, it's about what you can do for the state. And I'm saying the state, not the state you live in. The state meaning whatever nation that will be. So in Mussolini's case, it was Italy. So he was Italian, and he went to World War I. But before that, he was actually a hardcore communist, socialist rather. And socialists, as we know, are also anti-individual, right? That's the whole collective. And socialists believe that that no one should own a private corporation, a private company, that these things should be distributed evenly among the people. And we all know how that works. We'll talk about socialism in another episode. But fascism is also, it's similar in that there's going to have to be some person that's in a dictatorship that's controlling and telling everyone what to do. Socialists always think it'll be some benevolent man of the people, and that never happens either. But fascism doesn't really care about that. The fascism doesn't even pretend to care about being the will of the people. Fascism wants a strong, authoritarian dictator who has what they call a cult of personality. So who people can flock around and get really excited about. And they do like these fancy parades, military parades. And it's like pomp and circumstances. It's a lot of ceremony. It's a lot of look how great we are. But some key differences, because you'll notice socialism and fascism, they both ignore the individual. They both end up where the person in charge is getting too much power, okay? But where fascism is going to differ is that socialism is about what we call class warfare. So class warfare is or class division is, there's the haves and the have-nots, the rich and the poor. And we don't want people to have more money than the poor people. So we need to make everybody equal by stealing, their money and giving it out evenly. Fascism doesn't care about class. Fascism cares about the nation state. So in Mussolini's case, it was Italy. So Mussolini was this socialist. Then World War I happens, and Italy was on the losing side, and they were in economic turmoil. And Mussolini got kicked out of the Socialist Party because he started supporting war, which socialists, for all their flaws, are actually tend to be anti-war for the most part. That doesn't mean they're not anti-violence on other people, but Mussolini was starting to say, I want Italy to be strong. I want Italy to be like, the Roman Empire again. This is our nation. These are our people. Why aren't we standing up and showing the world our might and how strong we are? And so it became all about Italy. You didn't exist to get up and try to be the best person you want to be every day and fulfill your goals. You got up to protect Italy, to make Italy better. And so Mussolini got a little carried away with this, obviously, and he became this cult of personality that I was saying, and was preparing to use his military might against other people. And there was a guy over in Germany who really thought he had some cool ideas and really liked that Mussolini was a great speaker. He was very charming. You'll notice almost every villain is charismatic and charming and a great speaker. Notice that. Because that's true.
Yeah, that's how they get to where they get, it's by charming other people, and they're kind of con men. They have to be charismatic. So
because people wonder, how could you let a man that scary, that terrible come into power? And it's that's not what happens. They come in and they get, they come in with a plan. For Mussolini's case, it was look at everything during World War I, look at the economic stuff we're dealt with, look at Italy. Nobody thinks Italy's, strong anymore. And so that's a big thing. Now, Hitler in Germany, we've talked about Hitler before. We'll talk about him again now that we have the video component. This is the horrible Nazi leader in Germany. He actually was looking up to Mussolini, thinking I could learn a thing or two. And then I think Mussolini called him a silly little clown man or something.
He did?
Yes, it's really funny. After he met him, he was like, who's this guy? What does this guy think he's doing? And what's interesting about that is soon the tables turned. So Italy was actually the powerful dude in Europe. And then Hitler was like, oh, you think you can be a tyrant? Hold my cup of water. We'll see. Look what I can do. Be right back. Let me show you.
Yeah.
And kind of upped the ante, as they say. Mm-hmm. So Mussolini, horrible guy. This is fascism. But here's what I want to get across. You could say these things about, I said, talked about leaders and having people be a cult of personality, or they're coming in and they're making economic promises. And you could say that about any situation today, because people do vote based on what is the economy? What do I think this candidate and this candidate is going to do for me? Now, that doesn't mean that everyone is a fascist, okay? Because fascism, again, actually very specific to Italy. People forget about that. It was an Italian thing, but it's not just a political ideology. It is also an economic system where the state benefits from everything. You can have private what's the word I'm looking for? Enterprise, but it all benefits the state. So
yeah, the corporations and the state are kind of one and the same.
They're one and the same.
It's almost like the corporations almost run the state. They are that intertwined. And
but they all answered to the one person.
Yeah, the dictator. One thing that people say about Mussolini, you'll hear this cliche when referred to him, that he made the trains run on time.
Yeah.
So he had absolute control, absolute order, and he made the trains run on time. And that's a good thing.
Some people were kind of happy about that. We're not saying it's good. We're saying that's how people were thinking.
That's how they kind of justified, well, he made the trains run on time, and that's a good thing. But at what expense? Yeah. At what cost,
And that cost is the individual. Now, the reason I keep bringing socialism into this is you hear, I think people on sometimes one side of the aisle want to call their enemies socialists. And then on the other side of the aisle, they call them fascists. And it's like this back and forth. And once again, we go back to the Princess Bride quote of, I don't think those words mean what you think they mean. And so again, we were talking about how in fascism, this nationalism, the corporations and the government are working together to make this nation strong. Socialism is the government or the people, whatever you want to call it. There is no private corporation. They are dividing everyone's assets and they are controlling every company. So I don't want to call that a state because it would be a little different, but it is all this collective authoritarianism. So they can be similar in some ways in that they attack the individual, but they are different in practice. But these things are so particular to their origins, to how they came to be, that's why it's so funny today to me when people are like, oh, you're a fascist. And I kind of want to be like, tell me more. What does that word mean? Please.
Right. They can't tell you.
Means. They can't tell you. So there were some, fascism, I think at its core is this belief in protecting your nation. So this nationalism, this military might, this willing to go to war at any cost if it's going to show the world how strong you are. The individual doesn't matter. The state matters. And then this person that everything revolves around. And in this case, it was Benito Mussolini, which is a fun name to say. I don't know if he said it like that, but I like to say it like that. But I think another lesson to learn from this is that dictators beget dictators. And what I mean by that is if you have this one dictator, Mussolini, and then you have Hitler watching from Hitler or from Germany, you're creating another dictator, right? So there's almost like
getting ideas.
You're getting ideas. And where that works for evil, that also works for good. Because I always like to remind people of what the power of setting an example for other people. Right. And in Mussolini's case, he was setting a horrible example. And, you want to be the kind of person that sets a good example. Should you ever become a leader of a country, I don't know how many of us that's going to happen to. But so it's really interesting to see how that happens. The most important thing I think you can do is to understand words and their meaning, especially before you use those words and try to make meaning from it, because most people don't know what things mean. They just name call. So really encourage you to take some time and look into the post-World War I, pre-World War II time in Europe. A lot of really interesting things are going on there. Things that people like to throw out, and not just today, but every time the world gets a little bit weird and people don't understand it, they start saying, oh, you're a fascist, oh, you're this. But really understand where that comes from and maybe why that may or may not be applicable and why people use it all the time. So that is all today. We will leave it there. Rachel, thank you for talking with me and for reminding me of the trains run on time quote, because I was going to forget that. So thank you. Please.
Yeah, great topic.
Don't forget to like and subscribe to the podcast. And until next time, we will talk to you later.
See you later.